Now, before we get started creating our password settings object, we want to take a look at the default domain policy. So we'll just open up the GPMC here, go to our default domain policy, right-click, edit, and we're into our group policy management editor. So we'll take a look at the computer configuration, policies, Windows settings, security settings, account policies, and into the password policy, which gives you a default of 24 passwords, 42 days, max, 1 day min, 7 characters as a min password length. Password must meet complexity requirements, and we do not store the passwords using reversible encryption. Go to our account lockout policy. It's not defined at this time, and we'll leave it that way, and we'll open up our Active Directory Administrative Center. So in our Active Directory Administrative Center, we will expand out the System container and go to the Password Settings container. Now, as you can see, we don't have any password setting objects created, so let's go to New, Password Settings. Now, in this case, we'll create a new one called Manufacturing, and we'll give it a precedence of 20. Now, do note, lower the precedence number gives it a higher priority. So a precedence of 20 will have a higher precedence than a password setting with a precedence set at 100. Now we're going to change our minimum password length to 8. We're still going to enforce our password history, but we're going to be a little less restrictive and set it to 12. We're going to uncheck our complexity requirements. And please note that Protect from Accidental Deletion is turned on by default. We're going to change our max password age to 180 days, and we are not going to enforce the account lockout policy. Now we click Add. We're going to add our manufacturing group. Click Check Names, OK. Click on OK, and that's our first password setting. Let's just create a couple more here. We'll create one called Human Resources. We're going to set a lower precedence for this one of 10. Still going to enforce the minimum password length, but we're going to set the minimum password length to 10. Going to keep the password history and complexity requirements the same. And we're going to change our maximum password age to be 90 days, so it's a little more restrictive. And we're also going to enforce the account lockout policy. So failed logon attempts allowed is going to be 5. We're still going to leave it to 30 minutes for the reset of failed logon attempts. And then we're going to say the account is going to be locked out for 60 minutes. 60 days will be a rather long lockout. So we'll add our Human Resources group. Click OK, and that's the Human Resources one. And our final password settings is going to be for the Director of Human Resources. Now this is going to be our most restrictive one, but we're going to set the precedence to 15 to demonstrate a little quirk in here. Minimum password length is still going to be 10. Password history and complexity the same. We're going to set our minimum password age to 7 days and our maximum password age to 60. Now we're going to also enforce our account lockout policy, so 5 failed logon attempts, reset the failed logon count after 60 minutes, and the account will remain locked out for 1 day. Now in this case we're going to add our Director of Human Resources, Stacy Andrews, by user account, not by group in this case. Click on OK, and that gives us all our password settings. Now, we want to check to see how those settings are applied to various users. We go to our global search, and in this case, we'll search for Stacy Andrews, and we'll see which password policy applies to her. So if we check, find her name, click on the View Resultant Password Settings, and you can see the Director of Human Resources is applied even though the precedence is 15. Now that's because when you apply the password setting object to an individual user, that takes the highest priority even if they are members of different groups. So that will override the precedence. It's just one of those little gotchas you gotta keep an eye on. Now, in this case, we'll check Cecil for our next one. We'll take a look at Cecil's group memberships. He is a member of the Human Resources and the Manufacturing group, so he's going to have two password settings that could apply to him. So again, we'll check our View Resultant Password Settings and find that he has been assigned the Human Resources password settings. And that's because that has a higher precedence of 10 versus the Manufacturing, which had a precedence of 20. Well, let's go back to our password settings container. Let's say we wanted to add, say, the IT group to the Manufacturing password settings. Or perhaps the Human Resources. Let's give them a little bit more restrictive. Just add the group in, and you're done. Now, if it comes out that that was perhaps not the best move we could have made, we can always go in there, click on IT, remove them, and they're out of the Human Resources group. Now, if you want to remove a password setting, you have to remember to go into the properties for that password setting and uncheck the protect from accidental deletion. Then you'll be able to delete the password setting. And that's that.